Everyone, it's Paul here from the MIA, still transmitting from my little office here at home. Hopefully we're in the final run now before we're able to reopen our shops and our businesses, and obviously the start of June is the date we're fixing on at the moment for shops. And we've got some more furlough news for you, which we did put out yesterday, but we've got our good friend Nikki Gledow here from the HR Point to talk us through what we can about it. As usual, the government haven't necessarily fleshed out all the detail we'd like at this point. I've also been on a number of other webinars and conference calls inevitably over the last few days, and we're putting as much as we can for all the members about getting ready to reopen the shops. And it's clear that, you know, the aspect of risk assessment and due diligence is going to be a key thing that the boss must be doing to create a safe environment for both the staff and the customers. And again, we will keep talking about this and putting out any checklists we can and guidance from the government. And it's going to lead on to an awful lot of debate about how best to manage your staff to come back into the workplace as well, and considering their needs and anxieties as much as we do the customers, if not more, funnily enough. But anyway, I'm probably getting ahead of myself as usual. Why don't we hand over to Nikki and we'll hear what we've got the latest from the government for now. Nikki?
Thank you, Paul. So yeah, as ever, more updates, as just seems to be the world that we live in. So most of you would have heard yesterday the announcement about the change to furlough leave. So furlough leave has now been extended to the end of October, which I think is a good thing, because even when businesses are operational, they're not necessarily going to be at full business level. So it does give some security there. They have also said there's no changes until the end of July. So the scheme is going to carry on exactly as it is until the end of July. From August, they've said that you'll be able to get people back working part-time while furloughed, which is a big change, and potentially going to be quite useful as well as you're kind of ramping your business back up. We don't know exactly how that's going to work. There is talk of the costs being split between HMRC and the employer, but we haven't got any details on that yet. They've said further guidance out by the end of May. Knowing how things have been recently, it'll probably come out Friday evening before the bank holiday, but we will get updates out to you as soon as we hear anything on that. Obviously, we're coming out of lockdown slowly, and there's guidelines for how that's going to work when businesses can think about reopening, and lots of lovely HMRC guidance for everybody on operating your businesses safely, which is a big challenge and requiring quite a lot of changes for people to think about. So now is the time to start looking at that. Key things that they've said, first of all, is risk assessment, health and safety. There's always a risk assessment involved. So that's really, really important to go through that, looking at how you can maintain social distancing, how you can provide hand washing, hygiene facilities, marking out your 2-metre gaps, putting up screening, all those sort of things that you can do to protect your workers. And they also have, I call it a poster for want of a better description, that it should be completed, put up so employees can see it. And they've also said they expect employers with over 50 workers to put this on their website. So it's very easy to find. I'm sure we can send a link out, but that's what needs to be completed by all businesses. So it says you've carried out your risk assessment, you've shared the results with your staff, you've got cleaning, hand washing and hygiene procedures in place in line with the guidance, you've taken all reasonable steps to help people work from home, taken all reasonable steps to maintain a 2-metre distance in the workplace, and where people cannot be 2 metres apart, we've done everything practical to manage transmission risk. And then in each of the guidance, there is a lot of information on what you need to think about, and there's specific guidance to different environments. So there's one for manufacturing, one for offices, one for shops and branches, and for various other areas as well. And as more bits of the economy get opened up, there'll be more guidance for those as well as to how that's going to work. So it's really, really important to look at that now, even if you think, I don't know when I'm going to reopen. Yeah, they are saying that HSE are going to be doing inspections and finding people and prosecuting people who don't have measures in place. So this is really going to push health and safety to the forefront. So you can't avoid it. You can't say we're just going to carry on business as it was before. because that's not necessarily going to be safe. Or it might be, in which case you can just do your risk assessment, put your sign up, tell everyone that you've risk assessed it, and this is the results. With everything, it's about managing risk. You're not going to make your workplace totally safe, totally secure from COVID-19, but you can do the best that you can in line with the government guidelines. Paul, I think you said you've got some questions that have kind of come up around all of this that we can talk through.
Yeah, I mean, you know, the whole thing about creating an environment for the customer, in some ways, that is almost the easier bit, because there's very clear guidance on how you create the safe space for customers and all that. You know, I was thinking about staff and, you know, feeling secure to want to come back to work. And, you know, we've heard a lot of things from the unions and the likes of that about saying, well, if staff don't want to come back, they don't have to, and all this sort of stuff. And obviously, as a responsible employer, which people in our industry clearly are, you know, all the due diligence has to be taken, but somebody might still feel uneasy. I mean, there are clearly reasons why people can't come back to work, if they're still shielding somebody, or if they're looking after an ill relative, or of course the childcare issue is going to come up about the timing of coming back to work if your childcare facilities aren't yet open. And there's a difficult one if an employer says, well, I need you back. And I just wonder how that one's going to balance out.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a lot to think about. So if you're thinking about getting your staff back to work, talking to them, I think first of all is really important. So find out what people's situations are. So, you know, if you could open on the 1st of June, which of your staff are available to actually come into work? Because that takes out part of your selection as to who's at work and who might still be on furlough, making sure that that's fair. So you can't just pick all the male staff to come back to work and say, oh, we'll leave all the females at home because they're looking after children, because that would be discrimination and that would cause you an issue. But as long as it's fair and reasonable. So I really advocate talking to people. What do they want to do? What are their concerns? Talking to them about what measures you've put in place to make it a safe working environment for them. Listening to, you know, yes, everyone's reacting to this very differently. You know, even when you talk about schools going back, some people are like, yeah, great, send my child to school, and other people are like, they're not going in, it's not safe, I don't agree. And people have got that approach to everything. So it's understanding their concerns. Okay, we don't feel safe coming back to work. Why is that? We've done all of this, we've put all this in place. Is there anything else you want us to do? There is a bit of legislation, Section 44 of the Employment Rights Act, that we're all talking about, which nobody ever really paid a lot of attention to before, where if someone feels there is, you know, a serious and imminent danger at work, they can refuse to go to work. And that's what some of the unions and you know, other people are trying to promote. So don't go back to work, it's not safe. But it's about following the government guidelines on that front, but talking to people, what are their concerns and what can you agree? If they're really, really concerned, why are they really, really concerned? Is it a health condition? Is it family health condition? You know, could you just agree that maybe they stay on furlough for a bit longer to see how things pan out? So there's a lot. I think it's communication and conversations rather than you must come back to work tomorrow and we don't care about your situation. Obviously, if they've got school-age children that they can't leave at home on their own, then they can't come back to work. And you need to be reasonable and accommodating with that. You could say that they're going to use their parental leave, which is 13 weeks unpaid leave. Or you could just say, do you know what, we'll leave you on furlough, because you can do that and furlough is continuing, obviously, subject to what changes from August. But certainly to the end of July, that's fair and reasonable. And then if your staff were actually due to be at work over the summer holidays, what provisions did they have in place then and what's changed around that? Now that could be difficult if they've got people who are relying on grandparents who then, you know, can't have the children because they're not allowed. But again, it's all about conversations and consideration and reasonableness. So maybe from August, it'll be that they can work part-time and they can split their working and their furlough leave to cover childcare. But I think a lot of it needs to be around conversations and individual circumstances.
And there's a huge training need following on from it. As you bring people back to work, it's not just a question of, here, stick a mask on, let's go sort of thing. I think, you know, we need, again, back to due diligence, the staff. I suspect they need to make a record of the fact you have trained all the staff on safe distancing and all that. And if you're providing masks and gloves, which I suspect many businesses should do, because the customers will feel reassured by this, funnily enough, to see a business that is clearly taking it seriously. Again, you know, if you have decided everyone's going to wear PPE, you should get in staff to sign it. So I can just see that training before we go opening that door again is quite an important consideration, so that the employer can show on this due diligence they have trained all the staff are aware of the risk and what we're mitigating against by opening. Most shops aren't clearly going to bring in 100% of all the staff on day one, because it's unlikely we'll have 100% of normal level of trade on day one. It's almost like opening up a new business, and that would be the training again that would be needed to be given to all the staff as to how we're going to run this new business, particularly in a health and safety manner.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've had a lot of phrases called the new normal, and that's, you know, the new way of working is absolutely something you've got to train your staff on and educate them and make sure they understand it, and that they're aware of the consequences of not complying with it, yes, which is going to be really important, because there is that risk. You know, so yeah, absolutely. Almost like you need a return to work induction program. Yeah. So this is a new way of working. This is what happened. This is when it doesn't apply. Because you can't get out, you need to gas to try and get out if there's a fire. But, you know, various things of like, yeah, this is what you can do. What do they do if someone has an accident? All those sort of considerations as well. You know, PPE is, you know, not hugely recommended in any of the guidance. It's a lot of, you know, it's social distancing, hygiene, looking at having structured fixed teams so that you're keeping people in set groups. So if there is a risk in that group that someone's got coronavirus, you might only have to isolate a group of people rather than your entire workforce. Obviously, you know, yes, face coverings can be used. They do give reassurance, although they are said to only stop you spreading the infection. So if you think you've got the infection, you shouldn't be at work anyway. But yeah, I can see that they do give people reassurance. But there's nothing required, certainly looking in the guidance, working safely in shops and branches. It does not say masks and gloves for staff who work in shops, but a lot are using it. But then it's important to comply with the requirements for safe usage. So if wearing masks, it's washing your hands before you put them on, washing your hands when you take it off, not touching your face, changing the face covering if it's damp or you've touched it, still washing your hands regularly, washing the face covering daily. So there's a lot to go around there, and I think a lot of people are going to have a face covering that they're not going to do all of that with. We've probably all seen things on social media about someone with their face mask on and then they pull it down, have a cigarette and put it back up. Well, then it's just been utterly pointless. So it's about, if staff want to wear them, then yes, I would provide them to give them some reassurance as well, but you've got to make sure they know how to use them properly. Otherwise, they're totally pointless, and they make people feel safe. So then they perhaps step back a bit from the importance of hand washing and social distancing, which are the two kind of key things for people to be doing.
Yeah, and it sends a mixed message out to the customer in a funny way. If 3 of the staff have got something on their face and the other 3 haven't, it's, well, is this being taken seriously in here or not? It would almost be better to have no face masks, or everyone, I would expect, in some ways, but the business will have to make its own decision.
I think that's the thing. It's the business has got to manage the risk and make the decision as to what do the staff want to do and what do they think is going to give the best reassurance. Yeah,
it's a funny time when this one is almost driven as much by the employees as it will be the boss, because everyone, to use that hackneyed expression, will have to be in this together in a funny old way to make it work. And if you've got 2 staff not buying into it, think it's all a load of old stuff and nonsense, the whole thing, that really will undermine the due diligence that the employer is trying to bring into the environment. So I think, again, back to this training, getting people to sign to say they understand and are going to comply with these things, will be very important for the employer to show any authority of any nature. Well, this is all the steps we put in action to be ready to do business safely, sort of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing with the masks is to consider people's medical conditions. So if they've got any medical conditions that might make it not as easy for them with a mask, so, you know, whether they've got, you know, asthma, lung issues that make it harder for them to breathe with a mask on, maybe whether they're claustrophobic, I don't know. Some people hate the thought of wearing a face mask. So it is taking all of that into consideration as well.
Yes.
And yeah, so if you have a store policy, everyone's got to wear a mask, and then you've got people who, for a medical condition, can't, then making sure that they're not discriminated against.
Yeah, and with everything, it's as always in employment law talk, it's about fairness and reasonableness. I can imagine a lot of staff coming back saying, oh, I quite like this working from home stuff. Can I do it 1 day a week now, please? And how the employer manages that. Well, if you just do it for one, you really have to have a conversation with a number of people if there are opportunities for home working now that are preferable for the employer, as they may be or may not. But I can imagine there'll be a lot more conversations about that, which might require some consideration of the terms and conditions under which staff are employed. I've heard, you know, about employers having to look at terms and conditions because they might need to move staff around different locations on return to work because the world has changed if they had more than one shop, for example. So I can just see that everything we've learned over the last few weeks will result in some staff being certainly interested as to what the opportunities may be to do a bit more of it while still keeping the business successfully running.
Absolutely. And I think home working has been, more people have wanted to do it over the last few years, and I think this has kind of pushed it a bit more to the forefront. So this is an emergency. This is you had to work from home because that's what government told us we had to do. So yes, it can set a bit of a precedent if it worked. And I think, well, if it worked and the employees were happy with it and the employer got the work done that they needed to get done, then yeah, that's a good thing. And there's a lot of businesses that are going to look at that because it helps reduce carbon footprint, all of that with travel. And we're in a bit of an uncertain situation that we don't know when there's going to be a vaccine, if that's going to be successful, how long social distancing measures need to be in place. So we could be looking at people working from home quite a long time anyway. So I mean, if people specifically say, no, I don't want to come back into work, I want to work from home, then that's a flexible working request. So as long as they've got the length of service to make that, it needs to be dealt with in line with the flexible working request.
26 weeks continuous service, I think, is that before they can make the request?
Yes, so then it's going through that process and considering it. And you're right, the consideration is, okay, well, what if everybody wants to do it? What would that impact be? But some businesses are going, actually, do you know what? Do we really need an office? Do we need to do this? But equally, some employees are like, hey, it's great, I don't want to go back to an office, I want to stay working from home. And others are literally, get me back in the office. I need to see people, I want that social contact. It's difficult for me working from home. There are people working from home with families in flats, sitting at their dining room table. None of that is ideal. In a normal working from home situation, you'd have risk assessed, made sure they've got all the right equipment, desks, chairs, and all of that stuff to set them up working from home. So if it's going to be a long term, we're changing your contract and you can work from home, then all of those things need to be done as well. And you mentioned, about changing terms and conditions. So depending location, if you've got the right in the contract to change their location, you might not have, which case you need to. But any changes that are agreed need to be confirmed in writing. So if it's reducing hours, staggering start times, looking at using technology, different breaks, if that's all in the contract already, then you need to write a letter saying, in light of the current situation, this is what we've agreed. By whatever changes have been agreed, I would confirm in writing anyway. Even if it's on a temporary basis, while social distancing is required, this is what we're doing. Because otherwise, it's not clear. So if you just did it and didn't confirm it, and then you say, okay, right, that's all dealt with, going back to normal, people are going to feel like, well, no, because that's what I do now. So that's why it's important to clarify this is on a temporary basis during this current situation, and will be reviewed as and when government advice lifts some restrictions.
Got it. Okay. I had a couple more bits. Firstly, one of our members, Alan Greensill from Synergy, highly recommended using the HMRC app as a way of far easier getting through the paperwork in submitting stuff, particularly obviously payroll and things. So I don't know if you've come across anyone else use it, but Alan Greensill said it was a dream to use compared to using the website.
Well, that's good. That's good to know. Fortunately, I haven't had to actually submit any requests through HMRC. So, but it's good to know that the app's useful to use.
The other things I had is obviously you referred to a few documents, particularly those that segregate guidance for working in a shop or working in an office. So if we can get the links to those, Nikki, we'll put them in this newsletter as well when it goes out on Thursday.
There were a couple of, so I was going to say there was a couple of other things that we kind of said we'd highlight, which was about notice for getting staff back from furlough leave.
Yes.
There is no required notice period to get people back off. So arguably you could ring someone up today and say you're back at work tomorrow. I would suggest it's about being fair and reasonable. Again, so if you think, oh, we're going to open our shop on the 1st of June, then I would start talking to people now to find out, as we've already mentioned, what their circumstances, line people up for that. There were people who got phone calls at 11 o'clock on Sunday night to be told they had to be back in work at 7 o'clock on Monday morning, which is clearly far from ideal in how to handle it.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. And the other thing, again, just a reminder to any of you watching this, is that the MIA has bought extra time from Nikki's expertise. So if any of you on a one-to-one basis as a member of the MIA need to talk to Nikki about your particular needs in your business, she's available there for guidance and help for you. So please do use her. I know a number of you have already. You've had quite a lot, Nikki, I think, haven't you?
Yeah, quite a few, and certainly a lot around furlough leave and how that works and some of the technicalities. So yeah, please feel free to keep asking me your questions. That's what I'm here for. I would rather you ask the questions and thought, I've got a stupid question. There is no such thing as a stupid question. It's much better to ask and get the advice and make sure you do things properly.
Absolutely. Well, that was all I really had, Nikki. And I guess we might end up doing another one of these closer to the shop opening time, depending what next guidance comes out. But is there anything else you wanted at this stage?
No, I think we've covered quite a lot, given people a lot to think about. So yeah, I'm sure there'll be more. There's always going to be more updates in this situation. So as and when we need to do any more, we can do those. Brilliant.
Well, Nikki, thank you very much as always. To you guys out there in MI land, hope you found that useful. And as always, just send us an email if there's anything else we can do for you. And we just want to get our shops open as quickly and as safely as possible. Nice to see you all then. Take care. Bye.